All right,
Hi
David.
there.
Good to see you on Holland
Good.
here in Amsterdam.
Oh, good to see you too. It's great to be here.
I was asked to ask you questions about the role of economic policy on the internet economy and the role of the internet for economic growth and productivity. So my first question would be, why is it that especially small firms and startups are seem to be more better equipped to adopt ICT?
Well, I think it's just speed, right? When you're small and you're nimble, it's easier for you to start something and realize you're not doing it the right way and switch. You know, we call it iterating at Google, and we've always done that from when we were small. We would always try something, we'd test it out, and then we'd say, well, that doesn't really work, so let's change it. And we do that very fast. And we actually, as a big company, we've tried to continue to have that kind of approach to things, test things out. And I think a lot of that, so a big reason why these companies can move faster is they adopt technology very quickly. And then they can implement it and be more effective. You know, one of the things that's very interesting, we do a lot of venture investing at Google, and I sort of come from this world in Silicon Valley, and it's turned out that small companies adopt technology so fast, tech companies, ICT companies, that what used to take about $5 million in invested capital to sort of get them to a place where they might be somewhat successful, that's about $100,000 now. Right, so and that's because they adopt technology and it's much cheaper to make progress than it used to be.
And we are always looking for the next Googles, the startups that become as big and successful as Google and Amazon and so on. But being an established company by now, how do you maintain the competitive edge and the speed?
Well, yeah, we call it velocity, and in fact, we even have a weekly meeting of the senior managers, senior executives of the company called Velocity, and its purpose is to move things along very, very quickly. The thing that we were most afraid of as we got large, I mean, we're always afraid of the competition, right? You always have to be paranoid, you have to be on your toes and ready to move and to adapt to the market, of course, but we were always very afraid that as we got larger, we would slow down, that we'd become more bureaucratic, that you'd have more people, we sort of refer to it as people who can say no, right? So you get bigger and you have lots of people who can say no, and fewer people who can say yes, right? And we were always very worried about that. So we've taken a lot of steps to sort of just empower people, on the staffs to do things, to make sure that we don't have unnecessary layers of approvals and bureaucracy along the way. So that someone can actually get something done. There's nothing more frustrating to an engineer who's built something great than to have to deal with a lot of sort of managers who either don't know the technology or may know the technology if they dig in, but it takes the engineer 4 different meetings, right, to get something approved. So we try very, very hard to make sure that we're still moving quickly.
It's interesting that you bring that up because it's about management practice and people management, and empirical research has shown that it's basically organizational capabilities that determine the successful adoption of ICT. And so if we want to make our firms adopt ICT in a better way, we have to make sure that they adopt good management practices. But what should policymakers do to make that happen? So what should policymakers do if they want to implement good ICT policy? They should make sure that these firms adopt good management practices. But how do you do that as a policymaker?
Well, I think a lot of things were discussed early on, right, in terms of making it possible for employee ownership, for employee participation in things. I think making it easier for employees to move around, and just creating an overall kind of environment in a company where it's okay to take risks, right? Because a lot of times you don't get technology adoption because people are afraid that they'll make the wrong choice, and so they want to see if something works okay, then let's keep using that instead of switching to something else. So I always say that if you're interested in getting more entrepreneurship, more cutting-edge companies, more companies that are sort of challenging things and disrupting things, you need to build an overall environment that's more tolerant of risk. I heard someone talk about the cultural aspects of this, right? It's okay to fail, et cetera. That's very important. But whether it's in bankruptcy law, it's corporate organization, it's your ability to start a company without a lot of red tape, all of those kinds of things that whether it's fair use and copyright, for example, right? You allow people to take risks and push the envelopes of things, and then if it goes too far, you dial it back, right?
Yeah.
But it's allowing that kind of risk that I think is very important.
Yeah. And by doing that, you make competitive entry easier, right?
Yes.
So you keep yourself sharp by inviting competitors into the market, and that's maybe not up to you as an established company, but up to policymakers to make sure that entry barriers are taken down and
that's right.
entrants don't face any obstacles to become active, to become entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the internet, I think they're notwithstanding a lot of the concerns you hear expressed about Google and large tech companies or internet companies and competition, internet it's a fiercely competitive place. It's only going to get more competitive. So I think, at least in this industry, you have that going for you. It's one of these, the internet is as currently architected, and we're trying to make sure that, quite frankly, that governments around the world don't screw this up. Yeah. But as currently architected, there are not barriers, right? Yeah. As long as you keep the internet open, you keep it accessible to everyone, and there are no gatekeepers and no one who can tell you what software to build, no one who can tell you what app to build, et cetera, then I think you have that kind of, at least the level playing field that everybody can innovate on top of. And I think that policymakers need to really be paying attention to this, right? Yeah. Because there is a lot of activity around the world to change that, right? And to make the internet less open, to bring it under the control of international bodies whose agendas are unclear, right? And so I think that's really critically important, because if you want to continue to have, and we like competition, right? I mean, we like to see startups that come and challenge us. It makes us better. And we've done things that are disruptive and that make everybody else better. And then so it keeps going. I mean, I think that, so it's really important to us because our business thrives that way. But overall, the internet, the ecosystem, and hence national economies, the international economy is going to benefit from it as well.
And it's not just governments, right? It's also the telecoms operators and the ISPs who have to make sure, well, we should make sure, hopefully, that the internet remains open for innovators to get active on that platform.
That's right. That's right.
It's about net neutrality, and there's a discussion.
And I wouldn't paint all telecom providers with the same brush to say that they're all interested in controlling the internet or putting up pay barriers or so forth. I think that most in the telecom industry understand that it's a pretty good business providing connectivity, right, to the world. Our chairman has just recently written a book. I've told him that every time I go up on stage, I'll give his book a plug. But it's called the digital, this sort of on the new digital world, and talks a lot about 5 billion more people coming on to the internet. 5 billion more people, right, are coming on, and make no mistake, the connectivity that they will have is just as good as we have now. It will be better, indeed. It will be on phones first, not secondarily, and that's going to create enormous opportunities for the telco world. And I think so it's a very good business, and I think most of them recognize that it's not necessary to sort of say, oh well, these application people, these software people are making money, give me a piece of that. I don't think it's necessarily, it's not a zero-sum game. The internet, the telco providers need the content, need the services that companies like us provide. We need their investment in the networks. It's a symbiotic thing. I think it will continue to be there, and with lots of opportunity for everybody.
Let me do one more question before we go into the Q&A with the audience. Sure. So we talked about competition and intensifying competition in markets, and you mentioned the importance of open and accessible infrastructure. Another policy lever would be education. What's your view on that? What type of education policy is helpful to stimulate competition throughout all industries in the economy?
Well, I think this kind of digital literacy, obviously, I don't think we should just assume that everyone is going to, I think young people are very entrepreneurial in this regard, and they're going to know, because they need to be smart on the web, or at least have some digital skills to interact with their friends and do the things that they want to, and so they will learn. But I think it's very important we still have to focus on technical education, knowing how to operate, how to work your Facebook page and to talk to your friends, and being a wizard playing a video game. It's not the same thing as being a computer scientist, right, and building great new things, right? That stuff's very hard, and someone who's who's non-technical, I see how hard that is. And so I think that more investment in science and technical education early on is going to be critically important. Because again, going back to the 5 billion people, right, coming online, going back to the fact that as the internet and the trade in information and services, which relies primarily, you need infrastructure, but a lot of that is about talent, and there's talent all over the world. There's going to be much more competition, right, from the rest of the world that right now we sort of don't see it. We're going to see it. Right, so I'd say countries that are now in the developed world that are used to sort of being ahead of the game have to realize that there's going to be a lot more global competition with all the other the talent that's getting educated, that's going to not only get educated, but taking advantage of the technologies, right, to get educated. Right, if you look at I heard someone allude to this earlier, I think it was one of your co-panelists, about the different ways education's being disrupted with the internet, right, and you can go on YouTube and whether it's Khan Academy or lots of other things, and see how you can actually deliver really great educational services over the internet all over the world, right? So you have places, if you're talking about sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia, a lot of places, there's going to be a lot of talent emerging from that because they're going to get access to experts, technology, and so forth to participate in all of this. So I think that we shouldn't be sort of, complacent about education and keep making sure that people have the technical edge, because that stuff's really, really important. We couldn't be doing what we're doing at Google. We're not a marketing company. We're not we do have great salespeople and we do a good job marketing our products. But at bottom, we're about building things, right? And it takes a lot of knowledge and experience and so forth to build, automated cars or wearable computers or any of the other things that we're working on.
Well, thank you, David.
Sure.
Are you ready to take some questions from the audience?
Yeah, I'd love to have some questions and talk to folks. Before I do that, though, I do want to say a couple words on a certain topic that's perhaps been in the news the past couple days.
I guess so. Go ahead.
But first, I have to take a call from the United States government. No. So I wanted to say a few words about these revelations that have come out over the past few days. I have to say, we at Google were as shocked as anyone else to hear first about this Verizon order, this national security order that seemed to be a very broad way of getting, for the U.S. government to get phone records from lots of people in the U.S. and perhaps abroad. We were very surprised to see that. Google's never received any order like that, so I can tell you that. We were equally surprised to see the stories, the newspaper reports about the so-called PRISM program that purports to, where the government is allegedly working with internet companies to get information for national security reasons. And there were allegations in there about the government having direct access to servers of Google and other companies. I can tell you categorically for Google that the government has no such access, and those allegations are simply untrue. We've talked a lot in the past about how we do have to comply with government requests for information on national security matters and other matters, and we take that very seriously. When we get these requests, we have lawyers who look at them very, very carefully. We always hold the government to the letter of the law, spirit of the law, and we will push back if we think that the attempts to get information from our users are overbroad or in some way don't comply with the law, and we've done this in the past. When we have to deliver the information, we deliver it. So it's very clear, it's very important to understand. So we deliver it to the government. They don't get it from us. They have no way to sort of come into our network or come into our servers and get it out of us. We give it to them, usually through an electronic means, sometimes in person, but we give them the information. So this idea, and I want to be very clear about this, the idea that somehow the government is getting this kind of unfettered access to our users' data through any kind of a program is just false. So this is where this transparency is very important. You know, we've always prided ourselves on on making sure that when our users' data is being requested, we let the world, we let users know about it and how it's working. So we were the first company to have what we call a transparency report, in which we list all the requests we've got from governments all over the world. I'm sure many of you have seen that, and I think we're proud of doing that. The issue with the kinds of orders that have been in the news lately, or these processes in the U.S., is that they're secret, and we're unable to talk about some of these orders and what they mean and how many we get, sort of what they cover and so forth. We're going to be sending a letter out to the government today to ask them to allow us to include these kinds of national security orders in our transparency report, to be able to talk about how many we get and what they cover and so forth. And I think this is going to be very important for us, because we think it will demonstrate to people that this notion of this broad surveillance that you're hearing about, that somehow that people are claiming that Google's participating in, that's just false. We have nothing to hide on any of these subjects, and we want to be able to get this out there. So I just wanted to throw that out to all of you, and then we can have questions on that or anything else. Thanks.
All right. So if you have a question, please state your name and affiliation, and please keep it brief, and do ask a question instead of just making a statement.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Kim Vandenberg with AutoRemotion. I have a question. You recently launched Google Glass, and I was wondering what advice you can give to businesses to prepare for such a big change that's coming in the internet, or what opportunities that you specifically see?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know that we know yet, in terms of opportunities. The key thing that we did was we haven't launched it commercially yet, but we have provided versions of Glass to developers, right? And that's where all the sort of the innovation and the creativity is going to come, when developers come up with all kinds of apps that will be very useful. And so we're not quite sure what's going to come out of that. It's very likely that some really amazing applications will be written. Some of them are starting to trickle out. I think society in general is going to have to decide what's the etiquette, right, around using these, in terms of making sure that people don't feel uncomfortable with them. It's not that different from having a cell phone that has all the same capabilities, right? But it is different, because you're wearing it, and so we're wrestling with a lot of the questions about how do we make sure that people know who you're interacting with. If you have glasses on, how do they know that you're not recording them, and so forth. So there's going to have to be a whole sort of social etiquette that develops around this, and we're happy to be part of that. I think you have a question over here in the front.
Hi David, Erwin Bogert for eBurst Magazine. I'm a reporter. Following up on the issue, the NSA issue you talked about, how can you stated not giving unfettered access to your service, or how can you be sure that NSA or other agencies are not eavesdropping on your connections on exchanges or data centers where the traffic is passing through? So statements is obvious that you made, but how can you be sure that it's not?
What I said was that they do not have the argument. The allegation is that somehow we are collaborating with the government to allow them to get unfettered access to our users' data. That is false. It's just false. We do everything we can to protect our systems against unwanted intrusions from hackers, from governments, right? You may recall the China example that we had a couple years ago. And we have what we think is the best security team in the business to make sure that these things aren't happening. And if we find out that they're happening, you will know about it. We'll talk about it. So my point is that we are not, as being alleged, working with the government in some extra legal way to give the information. Thank you.
We have time for one more question. I'm looking at the clock here below, so one more question.
My name is Henk van Houten from Scriptworks. What's your expectation for now and 5 years for Google? Will it be more mobile, or what is your expectation?
Wow. Look, it's hard to know. We've always been this kind of company that doesn't really have a traditional strategy in the sense of, like they teach in business school, like you're figuring out, well, where are you going to go? What are your challenges and your strengths and where are you going to be in 5 years? We've always tried to build, the core strategy has been to build a company that can innovate, right? And so we may not know what the great thing that we're going to build is 5 years from now or 10 years from now. We want to make sure that we have an organization where that kind of creativity can happen. We can take it, figure it out, and then make it work really well. What I can say is, the mobile, I think right now we have this sort of, we think of these categories of mobile and desktop. I think all that blurs. I think the question is you have connectivity, you have it wherever you go, you have it on all kinds of devices. And so I think that's one thing that's clear. The other thing that I think is clear to us is that we've only sort of scratched the surface of the kinds of things that we can provide, the kinds of services, internet services in the cloud and so forth that we can provide to you. One of the things, I don't know how many people use Android or have seen Google Now, which is kind of the latest kind of iteration of Google on Android phones, and it uses voice and so forth. But one of the things it does is we're able to combine the data that you provide to us voluntarily with your permission, right? And then provide you with really great services, because what we're trying to do is go beyond just saying, answering your query, answering your question. We're at the point we should be able to help you more, right? Based on what we know, and be able to provide you an answer before you knew before you knew to ask it. So those are some of the directions that we're thinking about.
All right, David,
Great.
thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.